Welcome to Sisters in Service podcast. Most of you know me as a strong advocate for women veterans in being recognized not only as veterans, but also as women who are changing the world through our passion of serving, even after service. This podcast is my passion by telling all the stories of military brats, military spouses, active duty, and veterans, not to forget the veteran service organizations that help us along our transition journey. I want to thank you in advance for listening. I hope that you will join me every week. A new podcast and episode comes out every Tuesday, so I hope that you will join and I hope that you enjoy. This podcast is brought to you by Small Space Pilates. Are you ready to get fit and fabulous from the comfort of your own home? Look no further than Small Space Pilates. With live online Pilates and strength training classes, a video library, and a no perfection allowed policy, you can achieve your fitness goals without ever leaving your house. Click on the link for your complimentary week and start your journey to feeling fabulous today. Hi, everybody. This is Kat Cortado, the host of Sisters in Service, and welcome back to our newest episode. Today, we're going to be talking about reproductive rights or lack thereof for active duty military women, right? Heavy subject. We're just going to touch on it a little bit today because I was intrigued, to say the least. But before we go there, regardless of where you stand on abortion rights, this is important, especially speaking to women veterans or women who have served in the military. I am, and I will always be pro-choice. I just think having a choice is crucial for women. And let's be clear, no matter whether you choose to have the baby adopted, or abortion, all of these choices are incredibly difficult decisions. Each one has its own drawbacks. So I will tell you that I have been kind of sort of in this realm. And I'll only say this. I was independent. I was in the military. I was going to school in Germany. And I had an unplanned pregnancy. Abortion was out of the question. It was in Germany. My parents probably would have said no anyway. I don't think I had the capacity to even make that decision at that point. The other part of it was to have the baby adopted, and it would have torn my heart to think of a child all the way in Germany without me being there. So my choice was to keep the child. I did go into the military as a single parent, but I have to tell you that to date, as the date of this recording, it is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. In my life, the hardest thing. So the article I read in Elle magazine, and it asked this question: does restricting access to reproductive health care in the military hurt the service members, and does it pose a threat to the military or national security? So when you think about the number of states where abortion is illegal, 14, by the way, imagine for a moment being stationed somewhere in the United States. There is an unplanned pregnancy, and you're in a state that doesn't allow abortion. Think about that. Chew on that for a second. So the article was really informative. It talked about a woman who was in the Army. She happened to be stationed in Texas, which is one of the country's strictest abortion bans, and being unsure of your options. Now, we all know that being in the military, just because something is allowed outside the military doesn't necessarily mean it's allowed inside the military. We all know this. But even if abortion were allowed, and it is under certain circumstances, I believe, if it's detrimental to the mother's life and her health, etc. But you start to get into personal issues of your own. And how comfortable are you speaking about these things to your supervisor, to your military doctor, etc.? Because people start to bring in their own opinions of what you should do. And then as a woman, you're looked almost down upon because, you're not keeping up with your military duties, so to speak, one of which is being ready for deployment, which is another thing. So imagine being pregnant and you get ready to deploy. Now what? A lot of these states have anywhere from 3 weeks to 3 months waiting list. So this is something that I wanted to talk about. And by the way, TRICARE doesn't cover abortion unless in cases of rape, incest, or danger to the life of the pregnant person. So if you are this person who is trying to figure out what to do, you have to pay out of pocket. At least at the time of this, you had to pay out of pocket. And so think about all the states that have huge military bases, a huge presence: Texas, Georgia, Florida, Arizona, Carolinas. What do you do? So a 2023 report from the RAND Health estimates that 40% of active duty female service members stationed in the U.S. either have no or severely restricted access to abortion. And yes, I'm reading this because my brain could not remember all of this. Of those women, 95% are of reproductive age. And because we have no control over where we are stationed, you might think that you sign up for the military and you'll be placed in a state where abortion care is either easily accessed or not. And right now it's a big not. The military restrictive reproductive health policies aren't just hurting us as women, but they also pose immediate danger to the institution of the military, which in turn can help hurt our national security. So since Roe versus Wade was overturned in 2022, a lot of abortion seekers have turned to a medication abortion. But then there's a lawsuit seeking to overturn the Food and Drug Administration's approval of these medication abortions. And that went to the Supreme Court earlier this year. But a lot of military experts worry about how a potential ban on the medication could further restrict reproductive health access for women in the military. Now, I will say that the article did mention Vet Voice Foundation, which empowers veterans to become policy advocates. And they began reaching out on all of these military people's behalf and asking military officials and national security leaders to find out whether abortion should be considered a matter of national security. And I am trying to get someone from Vet Voice Foundation to be on my podcast where we can actually talk about this a little more in depth. And so we start talking about the lack of reproductive healthcare access, the prospect of forcing people to carry unwanted or unsafe pregnancies to term, which could have a devastating impact on our military. Not to mention the people involved, us, women. Can you imagine being deployed and you're pregnant? I mean, you have to be so on point. How on point could you be if you have an unplanned pregnancy? Just saying. So there are so many barriers for women to access abortion care. And I don't think that's fair. So a lot of the time when we have care, and I don't know about you, but when I got into the military, I thought this is the best care ever. You got to go, you didn't have to pay. It was great until something like this happens. So a lot of the times we are thinking that we are doing something great. And now we have to worry about our IVF, okay, in vitro fertilization. And the Department of Defense did announce a new policy for military members and their families that they will be able to get standardized coverage of travel and transportation funds for non-covered reproductive health care, including abortion and fertility care like IVF. DOD also granted service members administrative absence for up to 21 days without taking personal leave, which I think is huge. However, you all know the name Tommy Tuberville, who had an issue with this policy. And he held up more than 400 military promotions for a policy that was only used 12 times between June and December of 2023. So I think it's unfair to ask us to put our life on the line because we signed that paperwork. But then we get into a situation that is difficult to work around. How comfortable are you talking to your military doctor? How comfortable are you talking to your military supervisor who happens to be a male? Or maybe even a female? How do you share this information without feeling like you're being judged? And I wanted to put this out there. You can read it on the Vet Voice Foundation's website, and I'll make sure I put that in the show notes. But it started me thinking, because when we think about abortion, we think about women, but we hardly ever, and I didn't for a while, think about military women, active duty military women going through this. Why does it have to be so hard? It shouldn't. And with the incidences of rape and everything else, military sexual trauma, I mean, come on, this should be a no-brainer. So let's make it easier for these women. I'm not saying that it's the best answer, but it is an answer. I can't imagine being in this situation and having to do my military duties and not being able to tell anybody. That's the part that hurts the most. So I'm going to leave it there. I hope that you'll get a chance to read this article. It was on it's on Vet Voice Foundation. And let me know what you think. And if you are someone who has been through this or have been through this, and you would like to speak one-on-one with me, we can do it via an interview or even just giving me your information. I will not, if you wanted to, not put your name out there. But I think this is a discussion that needs to continue, and it needs to continue with the women who have served and the women who are serving. Because honestly, I don't think men get it. I just don't think they do. I don't care how high up you are. Sorry, guys. I just don't think you get it. What being in that kind of situation is like, because you feel like you have no power. You have no avenue to go, nowhere to go. And what do you do? So as always, it's a heavy subject, right? Please take care of yourself. Please take care of each other. And until next time, and remember, it's never too late to start your impossible.